The soft hum of conversation and the gentle clink of silverware against porcelain filled the air of Blue Horizon, Denver's most exclusive fine dining restaurant. Known for its discreet luxury and exquisite cuisine, it was the perfect setting for celebrations. But tonight, an unsettling tension lingered beneath the surface. Emma and Jonathan Sinclair sat at a candlelit table adorned with a bouquet of white lilies. The couple had just raised their glasses in a toast to their 10th wedding anniversary. Emma's eyes, however, darted nervously around the room, her fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted the napkin on her lap. "Emma, you seem uneasy. Is something wrong with the food?" Jonathan asked, his voice smooth but his smile forced. His impeccably tailored suit and confident demeanor seemed at odds with the flicker of apprehension in his eyes. Emma hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, Jonathan. I feel like someone's watching us." She glanced over her shoulder at the other diners, who appeared absorbed in their own meals. Her unease seemed inexplicable but deeply rooted. Jonathan reached across the table to place his hand over hers. "Love, you're imagining things. Let's just enjoy the evening. Everything is fine." His tone was calm, but the slight tension in his grip betrayed his outward composure. Emma nodded reluctantly and tried to focus on her meal. She took a hesitant bite of shrimp, but almost immediately her face twisted in discomfort. She pushed her plate away. "Jonathan, the shrimp, it tastes off. I feel nauseous." Jonathan's brow furrowed as he signaled to a passing waiter. "Bring my wife something else," he ordered, his voice firm. "And some water, please." Quickly, the waiter nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. Jonathan's attention turned back to Emma, whose face was growing paler by the second. Beads of sweat formed on her forehead as she clutched the edge of the table for support. "Jonathan," she murmured, her voice strained, "something's not right. This isn't just a shrimp. My chest feels tight. I can't." Her breathing grew labored, each gasp more desperate than the last. Panic flickered in Jonathan's eyes. "Emma, stay calm. Help is coming," he said, his voice rising slightly as he gestured urgently to the waiter, who returned with a glass of water and a small first-aid kit. "Is she allergic to anything?" the waiter asked, his professional demeanor cracking under the growing tension. "No," Jonathan replied sharply, his gaze fixed on Emma. "Give her something for nausea now." The waiter fumbled with the kit, producing an antacid and offering it to Jonathan. "This might help until the ambulance arrives," he said. Jonathan held the pill to Emma's lips, but she barely managed to swallow it before her body convulsed slightly, her hand gripping his wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes locked onto his, wide with fear. "Jonathan, why?" she whispered, her voice faint before her body went limp. Gasps erupted from the surrounding tables as diners turned to watch the unfolding scene. A few patrons stood, unsure whether to intervene or keep their distance. The once serene atmosphere of Blue Horizon had dissolved into chaos. "Stay with me, Emma. Please," Jonathan pleaded, his composed facade crumbling as he cradled her head. He barked orders at the staff, demanding someone call an ambulance and clear the surrounding tables to give them space. The restaurant's manager hurried over, his face pale. "The ambulance is on its way, sir. Is there anything else we can do?" Jonathan shook his head, his focus entirely on Emma's shallow breaths. "Just keep everyone back." Minutes felt like hours as they waited for help to arrive. Emma's condition worsened, her breathing growing more erratic. Jonathan's hands trembled as he brushed a strand of hair from her clammy forehead. Finally, the wail of sirens pierced the night. Paramedics burst into the restaurant, their presence bringing a sliver of hope to the panicked scene. They worked quickly, assessing Emma and preparing to transport her to the hospital. As they lifted her onto a stretcher, Jonathan followed closely, his face a mask of fear and guilt. "She's never had any health problems before," he stammered to one of the paramedics. "I don't understand what's happening." The lead paramedic gave him a measured look. "We'll do everything we can, but her symptoms are unusual. We need to run tests as soon as we get to the hospital. Jonathan nodded, climbing into the ambulance beside Emma. As the vehicle sped through the city streets, its sirens blaring, Jonathan held her hand tightly, his mind racing. He replayed the evening over and over, searching for any clue, any moment that could explain her sudden collapse. In the far corner of the restaurant, unnoticed by the departing paramedics, a woman in a plain uniform stood frozen in place. Alice, the restaurant's head cleaner, had witnessed the entire event. Unlike the other staff members, who whispered theories of food poisoning or allergic reactions, Alice's mind worked differently. She had seen symptoms like this before, years ago in her community. It wasn't food poisoning, at least not the accidental kind. Her hands clenched around the cleaning cart as a chill ran down her spine. That wasn't an accident, she murmured under her breath. Her gaze lingered on the spot where Emma had fallen. Someone wanted this to happen. The shrill wail of the ambulance siren echoed through the dark streets as the paramedics worked tirelessly to stabilize Emma. Inside the vehicle, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Jonathan sat by her side, his face pale and lined with worry, clutching her hand as if his grip alone could tether her to consciousness. "Her breathing is shallow," one paramedic called out, adjusting the oxygen mask over Emma's face. Another injected a clear liquid into her fore. "We're losing her pulse. Prepare for intubation." Jonathan's heart pounded as he watched the medic's quick, practiced movements. "Do something," he barked, his voice sharp with panic. "She can't die. She just can't." The paramedic shot him a look of understanding, but remained focused on Emma. "We're doing everything we can, sir," she said evenly, though her furrowed brow betrayed her own concern. The ambulance screeched to a halt at the emergency entrance of St. Mary's Hospital, where a team of doctors and nurses stood ready. The stretcher was wheeled out at lightning speed, with Jonathan trailing behind, his pleas for reassurance drowned out by the flurry of medical orders. "Female, mid-30s, severe respiratory distress," one of the paramedics relayed to the ER team. "No known allergies. Symptoms started suddenly during dinner." Emma was whisked into the resuscitation room, the doors swinging shut before Jonathan could follow. Left alone in the sterile, fluorescent-lit hallway, he ran a hand through his hair, his composure cracking. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence, each second stretching into eternity. Jonathan's mind raced with questions, but one thought loomed larger than the rest. What if she didn't make it? Inside the resuscitation room, chaos reigned. The team worked methodically but with an urgency born of experience. Emma's vitals were erratic. Her oxygen levels plummeted despite the ventilator. One doctor adjusted the settings, while another prepared a dose of epinephrine. "We're not seeing improvement," a nurse reported, her voice tight. "It's like her body's shutting down." Dr. Lyle, the senior physician, frowned deeply. "She's not responding to standard treatment. Let's push another dose of epinephrine and prep for advanced airway management. We're running out of time." Outside, the hospital's cleaning staff moved through the hallways, pushing carts and emptying bins. Among them was Ashley, a quiet woman with a keen eye and a deeper understanding of health than her uniform suggested. She paused near the resuscitation room, drawn by the urgency in the doctors' voices. Peering discreetly through the small glass window in the door, Ashley's breath caught. The symptoms Emma displayed stirred a distant memory, a case she had encountered years ago in her hometown, where traditional remedies were often a lifeline. Her intuition flared, whispering that this was no ordinary medical emergency. Her heart raced as she weighed her options. Speaking up would mean overstepping her role, risking reprimand or worse. But as she watched Emma's chest rise and fall unevenly, the decision became clear. Ashley pushed open the door cautiously, drawing the attention of the medical team. "Who are you?" Dr. Lyle snapped, his tone sharp with stress. I'm Ashley," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "I work here as a cleaner, but I think I can help." The room fell silent, save for the beeping of monitors. Dr. Lyle's brow furrowed. Help? What are you talking about? This is a critical medical situation. Ashley stepped closer, holding her ground. I grew up in a community that used traditional medicine alongside modern practices. Her symptoms, they look like poisoning, not an allergic reaction or cardiac event. I know of an antidote that might work. The doctors exchanged skeptical glances. Poisoning, one muttered, dubious. Dr. Lyle's voice hardened. We can't administer unverified treatments based on a hunch. Do you understand the liability? She's dying, Ashley countered, her voice rising. You've tried everything else. If I'm wrong, it won't make things worse. But if I'm right, please, just let me try. The tension in the room was palpable. Finally, Dr. Lyle exhaled sharply and nodded. Do it. Quickly. Ashley moved with purpose, retrieving a small vial from her cart. It was an herbal antidote, a carefully guarded remedy passed down through generations. She diluted it in saline and handed the syringe to the nurse. Administer this directly into her fore. The nurse hesitated but complied, injecting the mixture into Emma's bloodstream. The room seemed to hold its collective breath. Every eye fixed on the monitors. Seconds ticked by, then a change. Emma's heart rate began to stabilize, her oxygen levels climbing slowly but steadily. Her chest rose in a smoother rhythm, and a faint flush returned to her cheeks. A murmur of astonishment rippled through the team. Dr. Lyle stared at the monitors, then at Ashley. I don't know how you did that, but it worked, he admitted grudgingly. Ashley's relief was fleeting. She knew the consequences of her actions weren't over. The next morning, Ashley was summoned to the hospital director's office. The man behind the desk, stern and unyielding, regarded her with a mix of incredulity and disapproval. Ashley, your intervention saved a life, he began, but you violated protocol, overstepped your role, and risked the hospital's reputation. We can't overlook this. Ashley met his gaze squarely. I did what I thought was right. If I hadn't stepped in, she would have died. And if you had been wrong, the director countered. We can't afford that kind of gamble. Effective immediately. Your employment here is terminated. Ashley's chest tightened, but she nodded. Understood. As she gathered her belongings and left the hospital, her emotions were a mix of pride and uncertainty. She had saved Emma, but at a personal cost. Still, a nagging thought lingered in her mind. Poisoning. If her instincts were correct, someone had deliberately tried to harm Emma, and Ashley wasn't about to let that go unanswered. The afternoon sun filtered through the lace curtains of Ashley's modest home, casting soft patterns on the worn but clean wooden floor. The house, though small, exuded warmth and tranquility, a stark contrast to the sterile hospital where Emma had hovered on the brink of death only days earlier. Now, Emma rested on a simple but comfortable couch, her complexion still pale, but showing signs of recovery. Ashley placed a steaming cup of herbal tea on the table beside her. This should help with your strength, she said gently, sitting in a chair across from her guest. Her calm demeanor masked the storm of questions swirling in her mind. She had risked everything to save Emma, but the unease she'd felt at the hospital hadn't left her. Something wasn't adding up. Emma accepted the tea with trembling hands, her gratitude evident despite her exhaustion. Thank you, Ashley, for everything. If it weren't for you, She trailed off, her voice catching in her throat. Ashley smiled reassuringly. You're safe now. That's what matters. But even as she said it, her gaze lingered on Emma, searching for answers. Over the next few days, Ashley cared for Emma with the quiet competence born of years spent tending to others. She prepared nourishing meals, brewed restorative teas, and provided a steady presence that seemed to ease Emma's anxiety. As Emma regained her strength, the two women began to talk, their conversations growing more personal with each passing day. Jonathan must be worried sick about me, Emma said one evening, her voice tinged with guilt. She traced the edge of her teacup with her finger, her expression distant. He's always been so protective, maybe even too much at times. Ashley hesitated before replying. He didn't seem very understanding at the hospital, she said carefully, remembering the way Jonathan had lashed out at her. He was upset with me for stepping in, even though you were in critical condition. Emma's brow furrowed. That's just Jonathan. He's particular, likes to be in control. But he loves me. I'm sure of it. Her words sounded more like a plea than a statement, as if she were trying to convince herself. Ashley's instincts flared, but she kept her tone neutral. Tell me about him. What's he like? Emma's lips curved into a faint smile. We've been together since college. He's always been ambitious-driven. When we first met, I was drawn to his confidence. He made me feel like I was the only person in the world who mattered. She paused, her smile fading. But lately, I don't know. He's been distracted, secretive. He spends a lot of time on his phone, whispering during calls. When I ask him about it, he brushes me off. Ashley's grip on her mug tightened. Do you think he's hiding something? Emma's eyes filled with uncertainty. I don't know. I want to believe he'd never hurt me, but sometimes I feel like I don't know him at all. Their conversations often drifted to Emma's work, where the pieces of a troubling puzzle began to surface. Emma described the competitive atmosphere of her office and the strained relationships with her colleagues, particularly a woman named Deborah. Deborah has always wanted my position, Emma confided one afternoon as she sat by the window, the sunlight highlighting the faint shadows under her eyes. She's smart, capable, but ruthless. She's never hidden her ambition. Lately, she's been unusually friendly, almost too friendly. What do you mean? Ashley asked, leaning forward. Emma's fingers twisted in her lap. The night Jonathan and I went to Blue Horizon, Deborah came to my office just before I left. She handed me a small gift bag and said it was to celebrate my anniversary. Inside was a bottle of champagne. Ashley's eyes narrowed. Did you drink it? Emma shook her head. No. We ordered wine at the restaurant. I left the champagne at home. Why? Ashley didn't answer immediately, her mind racing. Did Deborah say anything unusual when she gave it to you? Emma hesitated. She just said she hoped I had a wonderful evening, but it was the way she said it, like she was mocking me. As Emma rested that evening, Ashley sat at the kitchen table, piecing together the fragments of what she'd learned. Jonathan's erratic behavior, Deborah's suspicious gestures, and the symptoms Emma had exhibited all pointed to something deliberate, something sinister. Ashley's thoughts returned to the antidote she'd administered at the hospital. It was effective against certain toxins, but how had Emma been poisoned in the first place? Could it have been the food, or was there another source? Her gut told her that both Jonathan and Deborah were hiding something. She couldn't prove it yet, but the inconsistencies in their actions gnawed at her. Emma deserved answers, and Ashley was determined to find them. The next morning, Emma joined Ashley in the kitchen, looking stronger than she had in days. She smiled faintly as she sipped her tea. You've done so much for me, Ashley. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. Ashley shook her head. You don't owe me anything. I just want to make sure you're safe. She hesitated before adding, but I think there's more to what happened to you. If you're willing, I'd like to help figure out the truth. Emma's eyes widened. You think someone did this to me? On purpose? Ashley met her gaze, her expression firm. I don't know for sure, but I have my suspicions. And I think we need to be careful. Emma nodded slowly, her initial shock giving way to resolve. What do we do? Ashley smiled. First, we gather information, and then we find out who's behind this. Ashley adjusted her blazer and straightened the ID badge clipped to her lapel. The words HR consultant gleamed under the overhead lights as she entered the sleek, modern office building where Emma worked. The air was filled with the quiet hum of productivity. Keyboards clacking, phones ringing softly. Ashley's heart raced as she stepped into the world that Emma had described, a place of ambition, tension, and hidden rivalries. Hello, I'm from Premier HR Solutions, Ashley said to the receptionist with a polished smile. I'm here to conduct an employee satisfaction survey and a few interviews. Could you direct me to the main office? The receptionist, a young woman with a tight bun and a polite demeanor, nodded. Of course. You can set up in the conference room down the hall. I'll inform the staff. Ashley thanked her and made her way to the conference room, her heels clicking against the polished floor. She had no official credentials, but her confidence and meticulous preparation gave her the air of authority she needed. She was here for one reason: to get closer to Deborah and uncover the truth. Over the next hour, Ashley conducted brief interviews with various employees, asking innocuous questions about workplace culture and leadership. Most offered bland, corporate-approved answers, but the tension was palpable when she mentioned Deborah's name. "Deborah," one employee said, shifting uncomfortably in her seat. "She's ambitious, very driven, but she's not exactly a team player." Another employee hesitated before whispering, "She's been gunning for Emma's position for years. Everyone knows it, but lately she's been different, more intense." Ashley's curiosity deepened with each conversation. By the time Deborah arrived for her interview, Ashley was ready. Deborah swept into the room with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, her tailored suit impeccable, her smile sharp. "Good afternoon," Deborah said, extending a manicured hand. "I hope I can be of assistance." "Thank you for making time," Ashley replied, shaking her hand. She gestured for Deborah to take a seat. "This is just a routine interview to understand the workplace dynamic. I'd like to hear about your role and how you see the company's culture." Deborah's answers were polished, almost rehearsed. She spoke about her dedication to the company, her passion for excellence, and her commitment to collaboration. But Ashley noticed subtle inconsistencies: a flicker of annoyance when Emma's name was mentioned, a slight hesitation when asked about recent projects. "Emma and I have always had a professional relationship," Deborah said, her smile tightening. "Of course, there's a natural competition in any workplace, but it's all in good spirit." Ashley tilted her head, feigning interest. "That's great to hear. And what about the night of her anniversary? I understand you gave her a gift. That was thoughtful." Deborah's expression didn't falter, but her fingers twitched slightly. "Just a small gesture. I thought it was a nice way to wish her well." "Very kind of you," Ashley said, making a note on her clipboard. "Did she mention if she enjoyed it?" Deborah's smile grew rigid. "Not that I recall. Is this relevant to the survey?" "Just covering all bases," Ashley replied smoothly. When the interview ended, Deborah left with a polite but wary nod. Ashley watched her go, her mind buzzing with possibilities. Deborah's polished exterior couldn't hide the undercurrent of tension. There was something there, something Ashley couldn't quite put her finger on. That evening, Ashley followed her next lead, Jonathan. Her suspicions about him had grown stronger after their confrontation at the hospital. His anger, his defensiveness, it all felt wrong. If anyone had motive or opportunity to harm Emma, it was him. Ashley parked a few blocks from the Sinclair residence and waited, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. When Jonathan's sleek black car pulled out of the driveway, she followed at a discreet distance, her heart pounding. Jonathan drove to a downtown parking garage and stopped on the third level. Ashley parked on a lower floor and hurried up the stairs, careful to keep her distance. She watched as Jonathan opened the trunk of his car and removed a small black bag. His movements were deliberate, almost furtive. As he walked toward the elevator, Ashley crept closer to the car. The trunk was still ajar. She glanced around, her pulse racing, before peering inside. Among the items was a folder labeled Emma and a small vial filled with a clear liquid. Her breath caught. Ashley quickly snapped photos of the folder and vial with her phone, careful not to disturb anything. The label on the vial sent a chill down her spine. Compound 14A, toxicology sample. Jonathan returned moments later, his face unreadable. Ashley ducked behind a nearby pillar, holding her breath as he locked the trunk and walked away. She waited until his footsteps faded before retreating to her car, her hands shaking. Back at her house, Ashley reviewed the photos, her mind racing. The evidence was damning, The vial's contents were undoubtedly linked to Emma's poisoning, and the folder suggested premeditation. But what was Jonathan's endgame? Ashley knew she couldn't handle this alone. It was time to involve the police. The following morning, Ashley met with Detective Marcus Hayes, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for thoroughness. She laid out everything: the hospital incident, Deborah's behavior, the evidence in Jonathan's car. Detective Hayes listened intently, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. "This is serious," he said finally. "If what you're saying checks out, Jonathan Sinclair could be looking at charges for attempted murder. But we'll need to corroborate your findings." "I understand," Ashley said. "I just want Emma to be safe." Hayes nodded. "We'll start with a warrant for his car. In the meantime, I suggest you keep a low profile. If Jonathan or Deborah suspects anything, it could put you both in danger." As Ashley left the station, a mix of determination and fear settled over her. She had taken a dangerous step, but it was one she couldn't avoid. Emma deserved the truth, and Ashley was willing to risk everything to find it. The morning air was crisp as Detective Marcus Hayes parked his car in front of the Sinclair estate. His partner, Officer Renee Carter, stepped out and surveyed the sprawling mansion with its perfectly manicured lawn and towering wrought iron gates. The affluence was unmistakable, but Hayes's jaw tightened. He knew the kind of secrets wealth could hide. "Ready?" Carter asked, adjusting her utility belt. "Let's get this done," Hayes replied. Armed with a warrant, the officer strode to the front door and rang the bell. Moments later, a housekeeper answered, her face pale at the sight of their badges. "We're here to speak with Jonathan Sinclair," Hayes said firmly. The housekeeper nodded nervously and led them through the lavish foyer to a sunlit sitting room where Jonathan waited. He was impeccably dressed, his tailored suit sharp and his expression calm. Almost too calm. "Officers," Jonathan greeted, standing as they entered. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Hayes didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Mr. Sinclair, we have a warrant to search your property and vehicle in connection with the suspected poisoning of your wife, Emma Sinclair." Jonathan's smile faltered, but he quickly regained his composure. "Poisoning? That's absurd. My wife had a medical emergency. Surely this is some kind of misunderstanding." "We'll let the evidence speak for itself," Carter interjected, handing him the warrant. "Please stay seated while we conduct our search." Jonathan's gaze turned steely. "You'll find nothing," he said, his voice low but laced with arrogance. "But go ahead. Waste your time." In the garage, the officers located Jonathan's car and opened the trunk. The folder labeled Emma and the vial of toxic liquid were exactly where Ashley had described. Hayes carefully bagged the items as evidence, his mind already racing through the case's implications. Back in the sitting room, Jonathan sat with his legs crossed, feigning indifference as Hayes and Carter returned with the evidence. "Recognize these?" Hayes asked, holding up the folder and vial. Jonathan's eyes flickered briefly with something. Recognition, perhaps, but his expression remained neutral. "I have no idea what that is," he said smoothly. "It's a vial containing compound 14A, a toxic substance," Hayes said. "And this folder contains detailed information about Emma's medical history, including notes that suggest premeditation. Care to explain?" Jonathan leaned back in his chair, his smile returning. "This is ridiculous. You think I poisoned my wife? For what reason?" Hayes stepped closer, his voice steady but cold. "We're asking the questions, Mr. Sinclair. But given your financial situation and your wife's sizable assets, it's not hard to imagine a motive." Jonathan's calm facade cracked. His lips curled into a sneer. "You don't know what you're talking about," he snapped. "Emma is a liability. She's weak, emotional. She's been holding me back for years." The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. Carter's eyes narrowed and Hayes's jaw tightened. "So you decided to get rid of her?" Hayes pressed, his voice cutting through the tension. Jonathan's sneer deepened. "Why not?" She's worth more to me dead than alive. But don't act so righteous. People like me do what's necessary to survive. Hayes stepped forward, towering over him. Jonathan Sinclair, you are under arrest for the attempted murder of Emma Sinclair, he said, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Jonathan's bravado faded as the cold metal closed around his wrists. You're making a mistake, he spat, his voice rising in desperation. This won't hold up. I'll get out, and when I do... Hayes cut him off. Save it for your lawyer. News of Jonathan's arrest spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the Sinclair family and beyond. Emma, still recovering at Ashley's house, was shaken when Detective Hayes informed her of the developments. He admitted it, she asked, her voice trembling. Hayes nodded. He confessed to everything. The poisoning, the motive. He didn't even try to hide his contempt for you. Emma's hands clenched in her lap as tears welled in her eyes. I don't understand. How could he? After everything we've been through. Ashley sat beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. You didn't deserve this, Emma. None of it. But you're safe now, and he won't hurt you again. The words offered some solace, but Emma's pain was far from healed. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound, leaving scars that would take time to fade. In the days following Jonathan's arrest, Emma began to piece her life back together with Ashley's help. Legal proceedings were set in motion, and Emma's testimony became the cornerstone of the case against her husband. Despite the challenges, she found strength in Ashley's unwavering support. You're stronger than you think, Ashley told her one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. What Jonathan did doesn't define you. You get to decide what happens next. Emma nodded, her resolve growing. I want to make sure no one else goes through what I did, she said. Maybe I can turn this pain into something good. Ashley smiled, a spark of hope lighting her eyes. Then let's do it. Together. The days following Jonathan's arrest were a haze of legal meetings, press inquiries, and long, sleepless nights. For Emma, the shock of betrayal felt like a tangible weight pressing down on her chest. But amidst the storm, there was one constant. Ashley. Ashley's home had become Emma's refuge, a quiet sanctuary where she could begin to heal. The modest house, with its cozy furnishings and warm atmosphere, felt more like home than the cold, sprawling mansion she had shared with Jonathan. Each day, Ashley's presence provided a steadying force, her words offering reassurance and her actions speaking of an unwavering loyalty. I don't know what I would have done without you, Emma said one morning as they shared breakfast at the kitchen table. Her voice wavered, but her gratitude was genuine. Ashley smiled gently. You would have found a way. You're stronger than you think, Emma. I'm just here to remind you of that. Emma wanted to believe her, but the road to healing felt impossibly long. As the weeks passed, Emma began to process the magnitude of what she had endured. Therapy sessions became a lifeline, allowing her to confront the trauma and rediscover parts of herself that had been buried under years of manipulation. Through it all, Ashley remained a source of strength, encouraging Emma to take one step at a time. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch watching the golden light of sunset, Emma turned to Ashley. Do you ever feel like everything happens for a reason? She asked, her voice thoughtful. Ashley tilted her head, considering the question. Sometimes. But I think it's more about what we do with what happens, how we choose to move forward. Emma nodded slowly. I've been thinking about that a lot, about how many women might be going through what I did, feeling trapped and alone. She hesitated before adding, I want to do something to help them, to make sure they know they're not alone. Ashley's eyes lit up with quiet determination. What do you have in mind? The idea for Safe Haven was born that evening. Over cups of tea and a notebook filled with scribbled ideas, Emma and Ashley envisioned a sanctuary for women escaping abusive relationships. It would be more than a shelter, a place of healing, empowerment, and community. We could provide counseling, legal resources, job training. Everything women need to rebuild their lives, Emma said, her voice gaining strength as the vision took shape. Ashley nodded. And a support network. Women need to know they're not alone in this, that there are people who care. For the first time in weeks, Emma felt a sense of purpose. The pain of her past no longer seemed like an anchor dragging her down. Instead, it became a catalyst for something meaningful. The early days of building Safe Haven were a whirlwind of planning and research. Emma used her connections to reach out to local organizations and potential donors, while Ashley focused on finding a suitable location for their vision. Despite the challenges, their shared determination fueled their progress. One afternoon, they visited an old, abandoned building on the edge of town. The structure was weathered and in need of significant repairs, but Ashley saw potential. With some work, this could be perfect, she said, running her hand along the peeling paint of the doorway. Plenty of space for private rooms, a common area, and even a small garden out back. Emma stood beside her, imagining the possibilities. It's not just a building, she said softly. It's a second chance. For so many women, they secured the property with the help of a generous donation from one of Emma's former colleagues, who had been deeply moved by her story. Renovations began immediately, with volunteers from the community stepping forward to lend their skills and support. As Safe Haven took shape, Emma's confidence grew. She began to speak publicly about her experiences, sharing her story at fundraising events and community meetings. Though it was painful to relive the past, she found that her words resonated with others, inspiring hope and action. "Your bravery gives me strength," one woman told her after a speech at a local women's center. "If you can rebuild your life, maybe I can too." Emma's eyes filled with tears as she embraced the woman. "You can," she said firmly. "We'll do it together." On the day Safe Haven officially opened its doors, Emma and Ashley stood together in the entryway, surrounded by friends, supporters, and volunteers. The building, once a symbol of neglect, now radiated warmth and welcome. Fresh paint, comfortable furnishings, and a colorful mural in the common area made it feel like a true home. Emma stepped forward to address the crowd, her voice steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "Safe Haven isn't just a place," she said. "It's a promise that no woman has to face her struggles alone, that there is always a way forward, no matter how dark things may seem." The audience erupted in applause, their faces shining with hope and admiration. As the ribbon was cut and the first guests began to arrive, Emma felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. Ashley approached her with a smile. "You did it, Emma. You turned your pain into something powerful." Emma shook her head. "We did it. I couldn't have done this without you." In the months that followed, Safe Haven became a beacon of hope for women in the community. Emma and Ashley worked tirelessly to expand its programs, ensuring that every woman who walked through their doors received the care and support she needed. Though the scars of Emma's past would always remain, they no longer defined her. With Ashley by her side, she had built something beautiful out of the wreckage, proving that even in the darkest moments, there is always a way to rebuild. Safe Haven was more than a shelter. It was a testament to the strength of women, the power of friendship, and the belief that no matter how broken someone feels, they can always find their way home. The crisp morning air carried a sense of anticipation as the final preparations for Safe Haven's grand opening were underway. Volunteers moved about the bright and welcoming building, adjusting flower arrangements, setting up chairs in the common area, and preparing refreshments for the guests. The mural in the main hall, a vibrant depiction of a phoenix rising from the ashes, was a fitting symbol of the day's significance. For Emma and Ashley, this was more than an event. It was a culmination of their shared journey and vision. Emma stood in front of a mirror in the small office that now served as Safe Haven's administrative hub. She smoothed the fabric of her dress, taking a deep breath to steady herself. Her reflection revealed a woman transformed, still healing, but stronger than she had ever imagined. "You look perfect," Ashley said from the doorway, her tone warm and encouraging. She was holding a clipboard, her own attire simple yet professional. "Are you ready?" Emma turned to her friend, a smile breaking through her nerves. "I think so, but it's still hard to believe this is really happening." Ashley stepped closer, resting a reassuring hand on Emma's shoulder. "It's happening because of you, because you had the courage to turn your pain into something meaningful. Today isn't just about the building. It's about the lives that will be changed here." Emma nodded, her gratitude for Ashley's unwavering support filling her chest. "I couldn't have done this without you. Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." The crowd gathered outside the building was larger than either of them had anticipated. Community members, donors, and local leaders mingled with volunteers and staff, their faces bright with hope and curiosity. Among them were women who had already found refuge in safe haven, their quiet resilience a testament to the importance of this moment. A makeshift stage had been set up near the entrance, adorned with colorful ribbons and flowers. As Emma stepped up to the podium, the murmurs of the crowd fell silent. She scanned the sea of faces, her heart pounding, before beginning to speak. "Good morning," she started, her voice clear but laced with emotion. "Thank you all for being here today to celebrate the opening of Safe Haven. This isn't just a building, it's a promise that no one has to face their struggles alone, and that there is always hope for a brighter tomorrow." Emma's gaze swept the audience, landing briefly on Ashley, who stood at the edge of the stage, her supportive presence a source of strength. "Safe Haven was born out of pain," Emma continued. "My own journey through darkness led me to understand how vital it is to have a place of safety, of understanding, and of healing. But this is not just my story. It is the story of every woman who has ever felt trapped, unheard, or powerless. Here, we begin to rewrite those stories." The crowd erupted in applause, and Emma's confidence grew. "Today, I am filled with gratitude. Gratitude for the volunteers who have worked tirelessly to bring this vision to life. Gratitude for the donors and supporters who believed in our mission. And most of all, gratitude for my friend Ashley, whose loyalty and strength have been my guiding light." Ashley's cheeks flushed as the crowd turned their applause toward her. She waved shyly but smiled, her pride evident. After Emma's speech, the ribbon-cutting ceremony commenced. With Ashley by her side, Emma took the oversized scissors in hand and sliced through the ribbon, officially opening the doors of Safe Haven. The crowd cheered, their excitement palpable as they entered the building for a tour. The interior, once a dilapidated structure, was now a sanctuary of comfort and warmth. Soft lighting illuminated the common areas, where cozy furniture invited conversation and connection. Private rooms offered spaces for reflection and rest, while a garden out back provided a tranquil escape. One by one, guests approached Emma and Ashley, offering congratulations and sharing their admiration for what they had accomplished. But the most meaningful moments came from the women who had already begun their journeys at Safe Haven. During the ceremony, a young woman named Maria stepped forward to share her story. Her voice trembled, but her resolve was unshakable. "When I came to Safe Haven, I felt like I had no future," she said. "I was scared, broken, and unsure if I could ever rebuild my life. But here, I found not just a roof over my head, but people who truly cared. Emma and Ashley, you gave me hope when I had none. Thank you for showing me that I'm not alone." Tears shimmered in the eyes of many in the audience, including Emma, as Maria's words hung in the air. They were a poignant reminder of why Safe Haven existed. As the day wound down and the crowd began to disperse, Emma and Ashley found a quiet moment together in the garden. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the blooming flowers and freshly laid pathways. "We did it," Emma said, her voice soft but filled with wonder. Ashley nodded. "You turned your pain into something incredible, Emma. Safe Haven is going to change so many lives." Emma looked at her friend, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "And so will you. Your strength and compassion have been the foundation of all this. I'll never forget what you've done for me." Ashley smiled, her hand resting lightly on Emma's shoulder. We did this together. And together, we'll keep building. That night, as they locked up the building and turned off the lights, Emma paused at the entrance, looking back at the space they had created. In that moment, she felt a profound sense of peace. Her journey had been fraught with pain and betrayal, but it had led her here, to a place of hope, resilience, and new beginnings. "This is just the beginning," Emma said quietly, more to herself than to Ashley. And it was. Safe Haven wasn't just a shelter. It was a legacy, a testament to the strength of women and the power of compassion. For Emma, it was proof that even in the darkest of times, there was always light to be found. 10 years had passed since the opening of Safe Haven, and the world around Emma and Ashley had transformed in ways they never could have imagined. The once modest shelter had grown into a nationwide movement, with centers established in cities across the country. Each location carried the same mission: to provide safety, support, and empowerment for women seeking a fresh start. The original building, now lovingly referred to as the heart of Safe Haven, stood as a testament to the vision Emma and Ashley had nurtured. On this particular evening, it was adorned with strings of lights and colorful banners, ready to host the 10th anniversary celebration. The garden, once overgrown and neglected, now bloomed with vibrant flowers, a living symbol of resilience and growth. Emma stood at the edge of the stage, watching the crowd gather. Families, volunteers, former residents, and community leaders mingled, their laughter and conversation filling the air. Children played on the lawn, their carefree joy a poignant reminder of the lives Safe Haven had touched. Ashley approached, holding 2 lanterns in her hands. "You ready?" she asked, her eyes shining with excitement. Emma nodded, a smile spreading across her face. "I've been ready for this moment for a long time." As the program began, the audience settled into their seats, and Emma stepped up to the microphone. The crowd quieted, their attention fixed on the woman who had turned her pain into a beacon of hope. "Good evening," Emma began, her voice steady but full of emotion. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate 10 years of Safe Haven. Tonight, we honor the courage of every woman who has walked through our doors, the dedication of every volunteer and supporter, and the power of community to create change." She paused, her gaze sweeping the audience. "When Ashley and I started this journey, we had no idea how far it would take us. What began as a single shelter has grown into a network of hope and healing. Together, we've helped thousands of women and children find safety, rebuild their lives, and rediscover their strength." Applause erupted, and Emma's heart swelled with pride. She continued, "None of this would have been possible without the incredible partnership and friendship of Ashley. She has been my rock, my inspiration, and my family. Ashley, thank you for standing by me every step of the way." The crowd turned their applause to Ashley, who waved shyly but beamed with pride. The ceremony included stories from women whose lives had been transformed by Safe Haven. One by one, they took the stage, sharing their journeys of struggle and triumph. Their words were raw and powerful, their resilience shining through every sentence. "I came here broken," one woman said, her voice trembling. "But Safe Haven gave me the tools to heal. Today, I'm standing here with my children, my degree, and a future I never thought possible. Thank you for giving me my life back." The audience wiped tears from their eyes, their hearts moved by the stories of strength and redemption. For Emma and Ashley, these moments were a reminder of why they had fought so hard to build Safe Haven. The pain of their past had been transformed into a legacy of hope. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the garden in a golden glow, the lantern ceremony began. Volunteers handed out paper lanterns to the crowd, each one symbolizing a wish, a memory, or a dream. Emma and Ashley stood at the center of the gathering, their lanterns ready to take flight. "This lantern is for all the women who couldn't be here tonight," Emma said softly, her voice carrying over the hushed crowd. "For those we've lost, for those still searching for safety, and for those who will find their way to Safe Haven in the future. May this light guide them home." Ashley added, "And this is for the strength we've found together. For every challenge we've faced, and every victory we've celebrated. This is our promise to keep fighting for a brighter tomorrow. With that, they lit their lanterns and released them into the sky. One by one, the crowd followed, their lanterns rising into the night like stars, each one carrying a message of hope. As the lanterns drifted higher, Ashley turned to Emma, her expression thoughtful. "Can you believe it's been 10 years?" Emma shook her head, her eyes fixed on the glowing lights above. "Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, and sometimes it feels like yesterday. But standing here, seeing all of this, it makes every moment worth it." Ashley smiled. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Emma nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "And we're just getting started." Later that evening, as the celebration wound down and the crowd began to disperse, Emma and Ashley found a quiet moment in the garden. The lanterns were now distant specks of light, blending seamlessly with the stars. "What do you see for the future, Safe Haven?" Ashley asked, her voice soft but curious. Emma considered the question, her heart full of hope. "I see more shelters, more lives changed. I see women finding their voices, their strength. And I see us continuing to stand together, no matter what comes our way." Ashley reached for Emma's hand, their bond unspoken but deeply felt. "Then let's make it happen." Under the star-filled sky, the two women sat in silence, their shared journey etched into the fabric of their lives. The past had shaped them, but it was the future they were building together that truly defined them. Safe Haven was more than a place. It was a promise, a light that would never go out.